What's up, guys? Tony here from Epic with Jessica here. She was our first physique competitor that we've had out of the Epic programs, and we're going to be interviewing her today to see what she thought of the process, and we'll go from there. Before we get to that, I just want to show everybody the Epic Cauliflower Ear Kit. If you haven't heard about it, it is the kit designed to get the cauliflower treated in your ear. There's nothing else like it on the market. You can go to www.extremeperformance.us to get your kit. If you use code GET10, you get 10% off. Okay, so Jessica just happens to be my wife. She was also, like I said, the first physique competitor that we had, which was a challenge because Epic was founded on strength and conditioning for athletes like fighters and those kind of people. But the physique realm was something that I wanted to try out, and she was interested in it. So why don't you just tell us about yourself and what got you interested in the physique competition?
Well, as a former athlete my whole life, I was looking for something to train for. Being able to work out is great, but not having an end goal was difficult for me. So this gave me an opportunity and something to have a dream towards. So that was what drew me to it.
Yeah, so pole vaulting was the her event forever. Tell us about your pole vaulting career. When did it actually start?
I fell into pole vaulting when I was 12. And then earned a college scholarship. It's very fortunate.
Well, let's back up. There's a lot that happened between that too. So let's go from high school, when you think you can argue is when you really figured out that pole vault was going to be something for you. I mean, at least your parents had known at that point that this was something that they had to invest in, which there was already investments before that. But I think it was a high school, when you got into that level, is when you started to really figure it out.
Yes, I took to it very easily. So in junior high, I was beating all the boys. Found a coach who trained pole vaulters, and then my freshman year of high school was the first year they had girls pole vaulting at the state track meet, and I won.
What year was that?
2003, I believe.
That was the first year. That's incredible that they didn't have women competing in that level until just 17 years ago. That just blows my mind. Well, anyway, sorry, go ahead.
My sophomore and junior year, I came in second, and then my senior year, I won again. And then I won one or two national championships in high school. And then I earned a college scholarship at the University of Hawaii, full ride. Competed there for 4 years.
She's still skipping some parts. Everybody was knocking at your door saying, we want you. Other countries even. Let's talk about that. It's the opportunity that was there.
Yes, so my grandparents were from Mexico, so I had the opportunity to compete for the Mexican national team, the junior team. I went down there and competed a couple times. Ultimately, it didn't happen, but it was a really great opportunity.
Yeah. So now we'll catch up to college. Where did you go?
University of Hawaii.
Okay, and how was that experience?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a bad gig out there. Full ride to a D1 school for pole vault. It's just, I mean, that's some elite level competition there. So let's talk about your experience just with pole vaulting and how that kind of shaped you for the competitive nature that you have now.
So pole vaulting requires strength, speed, agility, just you name it. It's kind of an all-around sport. So I had to learn to train in many different ways. We spent days on the track sprints. We spent days in the gymnastics facility, and then obviously in the weight room. So it became a part of my life.
Yeah. And from a coaching standpoint, having someone with that much discipline is one thing, but then that background of all those different types of lifts and all the different types of athleticism that you had to obtain and maintain, it develops very dense muscle fibers, which at this point, going for a physique competition, you find a lot of people that are do well in physique competition had a career or at least a stint in competitive sports beforehand. Usually not at the elite levels, but I mean it's there, and it developed a lot of dense muscle. So from a coaching standpoint, I mean, your preparation was had its challenges, but it wasn't as challenging as taking someone who had no experience. So that was something else for me. So after college.
After college, I just was working out just to kind of try to stay in shape. I picked up pole vaulting again a few years after college graduation, but it was fun. I enjoyed it, but ultimately life got in the way. So just been working out. When I joined the Army, I had to continue to stay in shape for PT tests and whatnot. But
yeah, so the typical pole vaulting workout, I mean, what would you expect? Let's say from your college days, typical week, I say. What was your typical workout for like any given week?
Mornings before class, lifts. We'd go to the gym. That'd be our primary lifting. Afternoons were speed work out on the track. And then 3 days a week we would actually pole vault.
Okay, so a combination of skills training and strength training, which is kind of the basic for how I write my programs. Is for anyone outside of physique athletes, is you separate your skills training from the strength and conditioning, and there has to be some kind of communication there with whoever the coach is, and if someone's actually trying to do something with their whatever they're competing in. Take a fight, for example, the skills training and the strength and conditioning to be in sync. And you obviously have that there. Okay, so let's talk about you. I think it was around the summertime is when you decided to do this. What was it that actually kind of pushed you in that direction?
I know you'd mentioned it before, and I always kind of laughed it off. Like, there's no way I can do the diet portion. Training, I got it. Diet portion, I just don't have the discipline. Mm-hmm. Being in my doctorate program and my clinicals and just kind of the stress of everything, not having the opportunity to eat all the bad foods I used to eat. I was already losing weight, getting a little more lean, more in shape. And then I started being more active in my diet. You were a big part of that, keeping me on track, but I felt like I kind of consciously made that decision that, okay, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, and while finishing the CRNA program, which is the doctorate program, long days, weekends even, and that's the preceding portion was extremely long days of studying for about 3 years altogether, and to get in the final stretch of that, and then decide you want to try to do something that you've never done before and that most people can't even fathom. It's impressive. It really is. Does anything stand out to you that was like the hardest part of it?
It was the diet. It was just staying strict to that. I enjoyed the workouts. I enjoyed pushing myself. It was really just saying no when I was, getting close to graduation. Everybody's like, let's go grab dinner or let's have drinks. And, I'd go and participate, but I didn't get to indulge how I normally would have.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the diet is probably the hardest part for most people, if not absolutely everybody. But my goal with doing this interview was that maybe someone will see it one day and that they'll kind of get something from it, because we looked online and in books and talked to people here and there, but you don't really grasp the nitty-gritty details of the whole experience until you actually go through it. And so we'll get to more details here in a minute, but I'm hoping somebody can see this and they're just like, oh, okay, it kind of clicks, because you get so much information and misinformation online, and people really just throwing their opinions out there. But like simple things like what actually happens backstage, there's not really a clear-cut answer to that with anything I've found. Everyone's experience is so different. and for our show, the coaches weren't supposed to be back there because of COVID and all that stuff. It was a lot more restrictions than normal. So there was a big mix of coaching and independence on her part as well. Okay, so we'll talk about the program itself. So we really started in August of 2020, and the competition day was December 19th. So what we did for Jess was, I knew that she had all these layers of muscle from years of pole vault and continuing that style of training. So when you talk about how you're structuring your workouts as a coach, yes, it's important to develop symmetry and all these other things, but I needed her to enjoy the workouts, because I knew if she didn't enjoy them, she wouldn't be doing them. And that's, I mean, you're not going to achieve what you want to if you're just having to force yourself to do every part of it. So if you look back at the program, it wasn't what you might expect from a typical bodybuilding or physique program. They were still doing some Olympic lifts in there, things involving kettlebells and different conditioning methods that we still use towards the end that you will never see a bodybuilder do, or physique. Most physique athletes still doing things like focusing on your lactic threshold metrics and those kinds of things. And that's just something you don't see physique athletes do too much. But it was something that I really wanted to keep you engaged in the program that you were doing. So I think that's important when you have an athlete. You got to keep them interested in what they're doing. Some people don't have a problem with it. Maybe they're new to lifting weights and they don't really know anything different, which is great. But the point is, your athlete needs to be constantly engaged in their training. So the first month of August was keeping you engaged, but also starting to introduce you to some techniques that you weren't as familiar with, like sticking with certain sets and rep ranges, and other workouts that started to build the symmetry, because I knew the dense muscle was there, and if we went too crazy with the dense muscle, it wouldn't have worked out in our favor on stage. And then we go into September, and that's when we started to dial it in a little more. The August was a lot of band work and eccentric movements, trying to develop some symmetry with different mass techniques. And then what day did you actually leave for Colorado? That was towards the
end of August.
End of August. So part of the CRNA program had her bouncing around different parts of the country for 4-ish week stints to get different types of training at different hospitals. So in the month of September, she was in Colorado, which for a number of reasons, it can be concerning when you have an athlete who's new to this style of training, mostly concerning the diet. But when they're just away, you just go away, it's a little concerning. It's just, you don't get to see them and train with them. And in our instance, I was prepping all the meals, which I had no problem with. I was kind of cooking a lot anyway. We just changed the foods we were cooking. So Colorado, we drove out to Colorado, and her diet was never really that bad to begin with. It was just a matter of dialing it in. And when you go from not bad to competition prep, that's a big difference in your diet. So she had never been one to be too concerned with what she was eating. It definitely was never tracking anything. So when it comes to having an idea of how much protein and carbs and fats are in particular foods, it was something that was completely new. So what I had her doing was using MyFitnessPal. It's one of the better apps that I've found out there. It's free to track all your intake, is just to log your food. And that's all I wanted, was to just log the food. As you do that, you become more familiar with what you're eating and how much you're actually eating. When I do have people that I'm writing nutrition programs for, it's the first thing I do. I want a few days, maybe a week, of just log your food. I don't want you to change anything, just log your food. And then you realize maybe you don't eat as well as you think you do. Maybe you're over by a couple thousand calories of what you think you're at. So I think that's a good technique to use, just to familiarize someone who's not as familiar with what they're eating and how they should be eating. So the month of September was, only thing I was concerned about was limiting sugars and hitting a protein goal. For her, the simplest way to look at it is just 1 pound. For every 1 pound of body weight, it's a pound of protein in grams. Now that's not exactly scientific, but it works for most people, and it's just the simplest way to address protein needs for most people. So out there, you found a gym. How was that? Did you have any kind of weird transition into that gym? What was that gym like?
Luckily, it was kind of just a key in any time of the day, so that the open availability made it super easy to work with my schedule in the clinical setting. And then it was odd going from working out in our garage, which I had been doing since we'd moved here, to working out in a gym. But I liked it. It was a nice change. Definitely gave me part of my schedule. So I was able to get up, go to work, go to the gym, come home, cook dinner. So it gave me a schedule to keep.
Yeah. And the traveling portion for nutrition it's important, but it comes down to how the individual plans for it. So you have always been a planner, but you had an Airbnb that was just it was a great situation there. So if you have an athlete in this traveling situation, if the Airbnb style is an option, have them go for it, because she had everything. She had not only comfortable lodging, but oven, stove, refrigerator, microwave, all these things that you need to properly prepare some meals. Otherwise, they're going to wind up cutting corners, going and getting fast food, thinking, if I just don't eat the bread, then I'm good, or that kind of thing. But that was, it was great. You could get your meals ready, and it was just a really good situation there. So you came back in the beginning of October, or end of September.
Beginning of October. Mm-hmm.
And so I wrote an 8-week program for her, starting around mid-October is when it actually started. But when you got back is when we started curbing the diet just a little bit more. And that's the idea with these things, is you don't want to go too aggressive too soon, but you also don't want to just take your time on it, depending on how much time you have. Some programs suggest upwards of 24 weeks for a cut, depending on how much the individual has to lose. But for her, she was relatively lean to begin with, and I knew there was a lot of dense muscle under there, so I wasn't too concerned about it. So we stuck with the 8-week program, and that was the diet was when we really started the diet. And what I'm a big fan of, and it's worked for most people that I've worked with nutrition-wise, is essentially cycling your carbs and your fats. So you establish your BMR. From there, establish your protein needs, which I usually stick with 1 pound body weight equals 1 gram of protein. We went a little bit above that on the protein intake, just because when you start to diet down, you're going to want a little more protein. Remember, these are all estimates anyway. All the numbers that we have for macronutrients, for calories, and all the information that you have for the food you're eating, they're all estimates. They've gotten better over time, but they're still just estimates. So going a little bit over when you're in a caloric deficit it's a safe thing to do. Shouldn't have to worry about any negative effects on it for most people, barring any medical conditions. So what we did is we controlled for protein, and then the carbs and the fats were cycled on different days. We had a low day, medium day, a high day, and then a super day, which was always on Saturdays. Um, that's how we cycled. The first month of the diet was done in that way. If you have any more questions on that, you can just send me a message and I can give you more details on that later on. But that's the basic gist of it. Some people prefer to just stick with a standard calorie and macro ratio for each day throughout the entire prep. Whatever works for the individual, that's great, but don't be too focused on one particular method of cutting, because the individual's probably going to develop a tolerance to that particular style, and eventually you're going to have to change it, which is exactly what we did. So after about a month of steady weight loss, it was roughly a pound or so a week. Once we got to like a stalemate, we had 3 or 4 days consecutively of no weight loss, and nothing else changed. The program was still consistent. At that point, we changed our diet. So into the next phase, we went into a keto style of eating, but we didn't maintain that. The only reason we went into ketosis is so I could slowly bring her out of ketosis to find out where that threshold was, where she was just outside of ketosis as far as her carbs go. So we had no carbs for 3 or 4 days, which was not fun.
No.
Not fun,
No.
because we were still a little more than a month out at that point. And going strictly no carbs at that point, it's not something you want to do. You still need those carbs in you. But we did it for just a few days just to get into ketosis, and we got right there at the top of the ketosis threshold. And for her at 5'4", roughly at that point, 128 or so pounds, carb intake right outside of ketosis was, I think we stuck with like 75 grams of carbs or somewhere around there. And for her, it worked out well. So we were able to maintain that for the next 3 weeks or so. And at that point, about a month out from the show, we've changed up the program too. I removed more of the strength and conditioning style of training. The conditioning, the cardio went to more steady state type cardio. What we call cardiac output is basically just keeping your heart rate around 130 to 150 or so, keeping it in that range for I don't think we went more than an hour, and that wasn't towards the very end.
That was, the last maybe week.
Yeah, so this is going to be a point of contention too for anybody watching this. You'll see a lot of physique athletes especially get these programs. Maybe they're doing it on their own. They're doing cardio for hours on end. You don't have to do that. You just don't. Most people don't have to do that. If you're having to do that much cardio, it's probably because your diet, there were some issues in your diet at that point. And some people can pull it off just fine and still do well and look good on stage, but it's my opinion that you just don't need to do that. And I don't think we even got to an hour towards the last couple of weeks maybe. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so if you have any comments on that, just let me know. Okay, so considering the whole prep, what would you say there's like one piece of advice that you would give to somebody who maybe was in your position beforehand, that something you learned that you're like, wow, I wish I would have known that beforehand?
Maybe not something I wish I had like known beforehand. Just trust the process. It's exciting to see yourself kind of seeing the changes. Trust your coach.
Yeah.
There were times that I didn't think I was doubting you. I know it probably came across that way. It's just unknown territory for me, so I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Trusting the coach is, depending on who your coach is, that is important. Hopefully, if you're watching this and you're considering that, you're you're either training yourself based on information that you've discovered, or maybe formal education, or you have someone helping you out through it, as your coach. If they're telling you some things that are just totally out of whack, maybe ask them about it in detail. But for the most part, you should be able to trust your coach. There were times where I was vindicated by somebody on Instagram who posted about eating gummy bears or something, and it was like, oh, you actually know what you're talking about. So yeah, trust the process. It's a long process. 2 months may not sound like a long time, but when you are restricting your calorie intake and increasing your activity levels, it makes it for a really long 8-week period, and that's if you're fortunate enough to do a 2-month prep. Other preps are 3, maybe 4 months, depending on the individual. What about your favorite exercises? Did you maybe not learn exercise, but ones you weren't doing before that you kind of enjoy more now?
There was actually a lot of extra upper body exercises that I had never done before. They were kind of fun, and even though I love leg day, I really enjoyed back exercises.
Yeah, and then I think your back really came out very well. So for the next prep, we're probably just going to maintain a lot of that. That was a lot of women like the leg days, but I mean your back really did come out really well. We can't complain about that. Looking back on it, was there anything that you found that now you would have liked to have done differently?
I think, as a couple other coaches had pointed out, some of my weaknesses, I guess working on those a little sooner. But otherwise, I really enjoyed the process, learning.
Yeah, and this is, I guess this applies to all physique athletes, but when you are in your off season and you may look good in a t-shirt or even, in your swimsuit or whatever, looking good to most people is one thing. Looking good to the judges on stage is something completely different. So you may think you have a strength, particular asset of your body. Maybe your shoulders are really well defined, or if you're a woman and you think you've got this great set of glutes on you. Once you cut all that down, your perception of that stuff is probably going to change. So I think if we were to do things differently, we would have had an experimental cut months beforehand when you can really identify that stuff. So that would be my big suggestion to anybody who's watching and they're thinking about competing. Experiment first. Experiment with your training and a diet, and give yourself a date a few months out and just see how lean you can get in that time, working on your discipline and just seeing what your body is capable of, and then you can assess your weaknesses, your physique. You say, I need to round out my shoulders, I need more hamstring work, or whatever it is. You won't really know that until you're cut down as lean as you can get. And for a lot of people, first time on stage is the first time they're doing the cut, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a lot of people just really like the experience of going up on stage and the transformation of your bodies, and that's great. But if you're looking to really be a competitor in it, you want to experiment and see what you can do, what you're actually capable of. So the last month of training and dieting and doing all this stuff and posing, which we haven't even talked about yet, was it getting harder mentally? Or were you pretty?
I mean, doing my doctorate at the same time as training for this was a blessing and a curse. It allowed me to not really think about it, but also not be able to think about it. So But yeah.
So what about the last week? So the last week, you didn't have school anymore, which for that, the last week we call peak week, and that's where you're really fine-tuning absolutely everything. At that point, you should be lean enough to where you can see, you're pretty much stage ready at that point. The last week is just a matter of maybe a water cut. For some people, it's erasing carbs from your diet. That's when I think it really gets hard. So at that point, you're on top of the world and just pass your boards and finish school, like for real this time. But now you still have this next event coming up that you've been training for the past 2 months. So that last week, was that maybe the hardest part of the process?
Oh yeah. First thing I wanted to do after I passed my boards was go have a stiff drink and celebrate, and I just couldn't. So that was tough, and the diet portion in the last week was probably the hardest thing for me.
Yeah. So on that note, the last week, the peak week, for her, what I programmed was essentially a deload week. You can argue the science behind how your body reacts to training, but I subscribe to, after you train so hard for so long, you need a deload week. And that's 3 to 4 weeks, and then a deload week. And that's how I've structured the program she's on now, with a deload week or deload weeks into the program. I like my deload weeks to mimic what the athletes have been doing the preceding 3 or 4 weeks, just with lower volume and focusing more on form and just the technique overall. The deload weeks are important. They can be difficult for some people who are used to training really hard all the time. But when you do that, you put more stress on your body than you need to, and your body doesn't really get the opportunity to recover like it should. And you really got to plan for that stuff. Otherwise, eventually your body's going to force you to take days off by injuries or just getting ill some other way. So the deload weeks are important. So the last week is essentially a deload week. The last 3 days before the event, there was no weight training. We did a cardio day on that 3rd day prior. The day before and the day of, there's no training. We chose to do a water cut that last week. So the way a water cut works is you have to bring your maintenance level of water up high way before you do the water cut. So the entire formal prep, that 8-week period, was 2 to 3 liters a day.
At least, yeah.
At least per day, to get the base levels of hydration up. So when you actually do the water cut, it has the desired effects. And so our competition was on a Saturday. I think we started on the preceding Sunday or Saturday, and we basically went we increased the water intake from, I think it was around 3 liters, and then over the next few week or so, we basically cut it in half each day. So the last day was, you're just sipping on water as you eat your meals, and the water cut works well for us. Not everyone does it. I'm not going to say that it's necessary for everyone, but the water cut worked really well for her when she was on stage. So talking about stage, the posing. So posing was completely outside of my wheelhouse, especially for a woman in bikini competition. So posing, let's talk about that. How was that?
It was very outside my comfortability zone. It was super awkward at first.
Yeah.
I had chosen to do this competition knowing I'd be in a very small bikini on stage in front of a large crowd, but I guess I hadn't really given myself the opportunity to really think about it. And so once I put on those heels with my posing coach, it was real. Yeah. And I had to learn how to walk in heels. I've always worn small heels if I wore heels at all. Always in tennis shoes for work and the gym and everything. So it was a new skill for me.
So, well, tips on that, because that was also not just the posing itself, but it was like equipment that you had to purchase to even do that. Because I mean, if you don't practice, I mean, it's like practicing training how you fight. I mean, that's probably the best analogy for it, because you the heels, the practice suit. Let's talk about that. Where'd you get that stuff?
I bought a pair of shoes. I can't remember where I bought them. And from what I thought I had read about, they ended up not working out for me. So when I had my first session with my posing coach, she suggested the Shoe Fairy, which ended up, I found the perfect set of heels. I was able to walk in them better. It was amazing how just something so simple as a half-inch difference in, the platform of your heel can affect your walking and make it so much easier.
So at 5'4", how big were the heels?
5-inch heels.
5-inch heels
pretty
at 5'4".
standard. So I thought, a higher platform will make you walk easier. It doesn't. So I learned to walk in them. Just practice.
Yeah, it takes a lot of practice. And it really is developing a new skill. Not just walking in heels, but I mean, there's the movements have to be spot on, because you only get one shot when you're on stage to show the judges what you've been doing for the past few months. If you don't hit that pose, then they're just on to the next person. It's really how long do you have? 30 seconds?
I think typically usually do,
or
but
10.
The show was so large that they gave us 10 to 15 seconds, and we only got to do our routine one time, even if you were in multiple classes, because there were just so many competitors.
Yeah. So your competition suit, how far out was it from the competition that you actually went to the first appointment for that?
So
in the process,
I had looked at buying suits online, sending them measurements, and then my posing coach said you should really get a custom fit suit. It fits your body. This woman knows how to make these suits. So I used Glam Goddess suits. I waited till the last minute. I think I only gave her 6 or 7 weeks, but she started measuring me. We picked colors, we picked design. And then we had 2 weeks out or 3 weeks out. We did, I was starting to cut already. My body was changing. We did another fitting. And then I picked it up a week before the show, and, it fit like a glove. It was perfect.
Yeah. The suit turned out really well. Where was she at?
She was in, I think, Roanoke, so North Fort Worth.
Okay.
So it's about an hour drive from us.
Okay. The suit is important too. Being in the audience, looking at some of the other girls' suits, it sounds a little tacky to say the suit just doesn't look right, but it's an important feature. Is the suit needs to match the physique and skin tone and all the other parts of the outfit, like the jewelry and how you do your hair. There's a lot that goes into picking a suit. It's not quite as simple as saying I like blue. Let's wear blue, which we did wear blue. But the point is, like, you can't just randomly pick a suit and expect it to really work out in your favor. Even if your physique is really on point, it may detract from the overall score. So getting on stage, what was that experience like? So, because I'm curious I don't know what the biggest crowd you competed in pole vault was, but those stadiums that I went to were usually, there was, probably a couple thousand people there. And then moving on to the collegiate level, there's the athletes alone, there's usually a couple thousand athletes, and then people in the audience. I wasn't sure how the stage was going to affect you, if it all. It didn't seem like it did.
Oh, it did. From pole vaulting, I know, at the state track meets or, regional track meets for college, there were thousands of people, but I was so focused on me, and I knew there were other things going on, that I never felt like everybody's eyes were on me. So that was the biggest difference, knowing that I was walking on stage, literally all the lights and focus was on me in not much of a bathing suit, and I was supposed to do my routine very fluid without showing that I was shaking like a leaf.
Yeah, yeah. It was, and at that point specifically, I saw a lot of women that were, and it really is distracting when you're looking. I could just imagine as the judge seeing these women that they're literally just trembling on stage, and I would attribute that to poor posing coaching. That's what I think. They're just so incredibly nervous, and not everyone has competed in front of half the world before, but some of them it's so obvious that they're nervous and their nerves take over and they don't hit their posing and they just fall apart, which I guess is part of the overall experience, is getting on stage and trying to address that. But I didn't see that with you, but there were plenty of women that did. You talk about posing coaching. Stacy Fote, her posing coach, she's an IFBB pro, and their posing room has a lot of mirrors, obviously, but they also have stage lighting, strobes. They got music going. I thought that was a pretty good setup they had in there.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially for the stage.
Mm-hmm.
It was good. But this particular event that she did was I don't remember what it was called. It was an NPC event, national qualifier in Bell County, at the Bell County Expo in Belton, Texas. And it was supposed to be this small show, but I mean, perhaps it was COVID that restricted a lot of shows earlier this year, but it's supposed to be this tiny show, originally in Waco, and then it got moved down to Belton. It wound up having 833 competitors, and all the divisions were stacked. There was just some interesting physiques there, a lot of very talented people, but it wasn't meant to be this big show. It turned out to be a very, very big show. So as the your very first show, did that bother you at all? Like when you really noticed how big it was?
That's probably why I felt like the judges could see my smile shaking. It was a little intimidating, but I was glad I competed in multiple classes, because after I went on stage the first time, every time after that I was ready. Yeah. I feel like I had a little bit more, groove to my step and was definitely more comfortable.
So talk about that. What she's referring to is entering multiple divisions. Can you describe what that means, and why you chose to do that?
So for the bikini division, I had the opportunity, since it was my very first show, to do a true novice, and then we had originally just signed up for that. And then speaking with my posing coach and a couple other competitors, they said, you've done all this work, you should do other classes. And other classes such as novice, open, and then they have age divisions. And this was the one time I wish I had been older, because they have over 35. I was 33 at the time. So I wish I had been 35 instead of competing against these young bucks. But it was fun nonetheless, and I'm really glad I competed in multiple classes, because that gave me more opportunities to work out, the nervousness, and just get more practice and walking across the stage and getting comfortable with that.
Yeah. So what all did you actually bring with you? I think that's one of those questions that we were trying to find answers to, but didn't really get it. So what did you bring? What would you say is necessary to bring with you, and then talk about the backstage environment, what that was like?
So I brought my own band. There was some back there, but in order to get your pump, you really wanted your own. Obviously, suit, heels, robe. I had sweats because it was cold back there. Yeah,
it was pretty cold in there. The particular the event was place where they hold concerts and rodeos and all this stuff. So it was a big open area. It was pretty chilly in there.
And then I had read about bringing your own kind of like cheap mirror, like a body length mirror, and that turned out to be so helpful. I had so many girls coming by asking, "Can I just peek in your mirror?" I was like, "Yeah, it's fine." Snacks, my gummy bears were amazing.
Yeah.
A little bit of alcohol, obviously not indulging, but a little bit to calm the nerves.
What did you have?
I think I had wine.
Yeah.
And just a few sips here and there, just kind of mellow me out a little bit because my nerves were pretty high. A towel, something to sit on, because a lot of the time we were just laying around back there, just because you didn't want to stand in your heels and your feet would hurt. And so my phone, I brought an extra charger, kind of keep me sane. Yeah.
What were
big items?
So what was actually going on back there?
So the tanning company was back there. So they were, fixing people's tans right before you went on. They'd give you a glaze and get you looking just perfect. People were getting their pump on, practicing posing in your mirror, staying warm, snacking. Yeah, it was just a lot of bodies.
Yeah. Let's back up and talk about the tan. And while we're talking about the tan, makeup and hair as well. These are things that men don't really have to worry about as much, except for the tan. But for women, the hair, makeup, and the tan are critical points. So let's talk about that.
So the tan, I just used the host tanning company, Pro Tan. It was so easy. They had a really great system. Went in the day before. I only got 2 coats, but I guess you can get 3. Since I'm Hispanic, I kind of had a little base coat, so it was fine.
What was the process?
So the night before you go in, they spray you really dark, and you don't get to take a shower. So you wear old, dirty clothes that you don't mind getting stained. Go home, sleep on dark sheets. Bring your own dark towel. You don't want to stain like your friends or your hotel's sheets and whatnot. And then the next day, makeup. Some people are getting makeup done very, very early. And then your second coat of tan before you go on, and your glaze right before you hit the stage.
And the makeup and hair?
Makeup and hair. So I ended up doing my own hair. I wanted to save a little bit of money. I think it turned out well. Makeup, I had to find somebody. Since my posing coach was 3 hours away, I would have absolutely used her. But luckily, on some community Facebook pages I found for bikini competitors, I found a makeup artist, and she was wonderful. Looked her up on Instagram. She did fitness competitors all over. And so I used her, and she was great. I think my makeup turned out really well. Looked great on stage.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just, you have to think about the investment.
Yeah, and that's a good point about the hair. The entire process is one big financial drain. The competition, we're looking for the NPC events, really all the other events. You got to buy the car that gets you the ability to compete in the league or the organization. There's the time and the money and the effort into the diet, into wherever you're training at, the suit, the heels. If you can start curbing that financial impact with doing things on your own, that's a good idea to do. So hair, for example, I mean, that probably saved us at least $150. Mm-hmm. It's all very expensive, and if you wait until the last minute to do it or to try to organize that, it's not going to work out for you, and then you're going to be forced to doing it yourself, or maybe paying a whole lot more than you would otherwise. It's like anything else. If you wait till the last minute, you're going to be upcharged. So we did you did the event. Pictures, the pictures afterward. What did you think about that? I mean, did you suggest doing that now, looking back on it?
Absolutely. So I did a kind of a mini session at the show after I competed in my suit. I really liked that because I didn't know how stage pictures were going to come out. They ended up really good.
Yeah.
I really liked those. But doing fitness pictures a couple days later. I just was really nervous with the idea, but I love that we've documented. This is, you know, where we were at for this show. This is how far I've come. And looking back when I'm like 70 and be like, look what I did. Yeah. So I thought it was a great idea.
Yeah, the stage shots did turn out really well. It's a big competition. So any big event like this, it's just everybody's going to be rushed the whole time. And this was really no different. As soon as we got off stage, we went to pictures. It was just one thing after another. And they have to do that, especially with that many competitors. While we're talking about that, so the event being as big as it was, they had to flex on the times, right? So the men go first, and then the women, at least for this event. But we got there around 10:30 or so in the morning, and we didn't leave until about 1 a.m. Because there were so many women to compete, well, men and women to compete. The timeline kept getting pushed. It was a long day. That was a long day for me sitting in the audience. I mean, for all the competitors up there, I'm sure it was much longer. Just thinking about what you're going to eat. But on that note, something that doesn't always get discussed, and I didn't really find a clear. There was really no clear information of it online that I found. I knew what we were going to do, but I was just kind of looking for other things too. Like, what are you eating backstage? Lucas? No. The games don't work on that, bud.
So backstage, before I went on, it was mainly rice cakes and peanut butter. Kind of every hour I had some gummy bears right before. But I know some other people were eating full-on meals, so I know it's really different on how people eat on show day.
Yeah, I had no problem with her eating, you know, some candy at that point, because we've come this far. We've done the water cut, and at the last few days we had depleted her carb intake so much that nothing was being stored. It was all going directly to the muscles, and that's something to keep in mind. Even after the actual competition, the morning part of it, we went and we had a cheeseburger, and there was still, you know, the follow-on show at that point. You got to just remember that when you get to that level, after doing it for so long, in that last peak week, anything you eat is pretty much going right to your muscles. That's not quite literally the case in terms of science, but I mean, that's how you should think about it. Whatever you eat is going directly to your muscles. I would say don't be afraid to indulge a little bit. Definitely don't want to go overboard, but it's not a bad thing to have some things you haven't been able to have the past few months. It's just not that big of a deal. And it's really, it's going to make your muscles pop more, because all those carbs are going directly to your muscles, and you're going to look great either way. So don't worry about that. So back to the stage shots. I thought the stage shots were just incredible. Not only the lighting, the tan, but I mean, all the work you've been doing all that time, and then seeing when you saw those stage shots, I mean, what did you think?
So when I didn't place or do as well as I wanted to, I kind of left really disappointed, like just doubting what I brought to the show. And so those stage shots just really like brought back my confidence. Like, I worked my butt off, and it showed. I was very proud of what we brought. You know, obviously I knew what we could improve upon, and I know what I'm going to do for next time. But those stage shots really just brought me back to it and said, you know, I had fun. I looked good. I enjoyed myself.
Yeah. And the placing, you learn a lot when you really start looking into the bodybuilding world about the different organizations that are out there, and ones that allow you to take certain enhancement, supplements and others that don't. And this was an NPC event. They're not back there checking on anybody for anything. So she was absolutely all natural. We even tried creatine early on through the training, and we found out she just can't tolerate creatine. So creatine was off the table. So supplement wise, the only thing that we took, if you consider caffeine a supplement, caffeine and beet powder was the pre-workout, and protein shakes. If you consider those to be supplements, then that's the only thing we took. But really, those are natural products anyway. But that you can definitely see a difference in some of the other women that are taking some diuretics or some things that are really helping them lean out a lot more. Just for numbers' sake, she came in at probably around 11% body fat, which is good for a bikini. And I thought she looked very, very well on stage. Let's talk about food throughout the process. I think we did the math on eggs just for the prep. I mean, just for 2 weeks, and eggs was like 300 or 400 eggs, something around that.
We were started out with 3 eggs a day, and I thought that was a lot. Then we went to 4 eggs a day, so I was eating almost 30 eggs a week.
Yeah, so a lot of eggs. So most of the foods we ate were pretty similar from day to day. Mm-hmm. Knowing her, again, this is the advantage to having someone you live with who's also your coach and your trainer. You really know the person very well. So for her, I knew she wouldn't want to eat the same thing every day. I could eat the same foods most of the time. A lot of bodybuilders tend to do that. Physique athletes like to just stick with what they know is going to be the same content. It's just simpler that way, but I know she wouldn't do that. So it was hard enough to get breakfast to be the same. But it was eggs in the morning. We were doing oatmeal for a while in the morning, but then we stopped that when we started restricting carbs a lot more. Pre-workout was oatmeal. Towards the end, oatmeal roughly an hour and a half or so before the workout, to get the carbs to fuel you through your training. After workout was usually a post-workout shake, and maybe some carbs in that too. Carb sources were bananas, oatmeal, and sweet potatoes. I think that's pretty much it. Mm-hmm. Especially the last month when we really started focusing on carbs. Just those 3 was most of the carbs that she was taking in. Protein wise, a lot of chicken, some beef. We didn't do that much fish, but we did some tilapia, tuna. The tuna pouches are great. They're easy. You can take them on the go. So much easier than a lot of other foods in cans or whatever. But the tuna pouches were great. Just an awesome source. I think about it, at the event they were selling those tuna pouches for $4 each. So we get them for $1 each. So she said, bring your food to the event. Definitely bring your own food, because they're going to price gouge the hell out of you when you're at the event. What are we looking at next?
We're going to do an all-natural organization. So I'm excited about that here in a little less than 4 months, 3.5 months. So time to get back to it.
Yep. So training wise, we're looking at mid-March, mm-hmm. and today is January 2nd. So this week we started not necessarily a true mass phase, but a mass phase, trying to work on some areas that we need to work on for 3 or 4 weeks, and then we're going right into another prep. So that, I think we're going to do well. fully understanding that what worked for us in the past may not work for us this time around. So because we're so close to the previous show, we're just going to focus on what we know works and see if that's going to work again. But if it doesn't, we will just have to adjust from there. Another point that I wanted to talk about was after the show. There's a significant danger that a lot of people fall into with the reverse dieting or not reverse dieting. Any terms that you want to use, the point is that some people go too hard, too fast into either eating like they were before or just overindulging in foods that they hadn't had for a while. So how's that been for you?
It's been harder than like most of the prep. Now that I feel like I have more knowledge on foods that are, better for you and not so great for you, I'm definitely more cognizant of what I put into my body now. Yeah. Definitely indulged after, but I've tried to balance that by just tracking macros as best I can and not going too crazy.
Yeah, and I'm not advocating that anyone doesn't reward themselves after doing this. Absolutely should. If you do it right, it's been a very rough process for you. That's just the way it is. And to say that you can't take a few days and eat those burgers and pizza and all those things, go for it, do it. But remember that if you don't pay attention to what you're eating and slowly reintroduce those foods back into your diet, slowly increase your calories and your other macronutrients, slowly increase that over the period of weeks, then you're in for a very rude awakening, because you're going to have a very bad time. And there's also the danger of maybe some mental health issues there, because you look one way and you work so hard for it, and then you overindulge, and a few weeks later you're looking like some kind of monster. So it's just something to be aware of. Don't do that. Just slowly reverse yourself back to a level of normalcy, and that's the safe way to do it. So I think we're all out of questions for you.
Okay.
Is there any more advice you would give to anybody? One more thing?
Enjoy the process.
Enjoy the process as much as you can.
It was fun. I mean, there were tough points, but it was fun.
Yeah. I want to give a special shout out to Bryant and Stacy Fout over at Flex Fitness 247 in McKinney. It's at the 75 in Virginia, right there. They helped us out a lot. They're both professional bodybuilders. Stacy does all the posing. She does makeup. She does hair. She does everything you need there. And Bryant, he does a lot of very, very good personal training and bodybuilding programs. I mean, it's a one-stop shop. You do it all. If you're in the greater Dallas area, I can guarantee you're not going to find better value for your dollar than going and reaching out to these guys and just seeing what they have to offer. It's a great place to go. It really is. And they're good people, and they're looking to help. So check them out. They're on all the socials, and just stop by and say hi. It's 24/7 access. You can't go wrong. $25 a month of membership. We wound up training there, and Brian helped us out quite a bit with especially in the last month or so, giving us some bits of advice here and there. So thanks, Brian. Appreciate that. But yeah, I think that's it. Don't forget to go to extremeperformance.us for all you grapplers out there. Get your cauliflower kit so you don't have to walk around with cauliflower ear for the rest of your life. It's not as cool as you think it is. If you had the opportunity to fix it when you got it, then you're in good shape. But if you don't, check it out. Remember, the code is GET10 for 10% off. Thanks.